Hey, so the COP25 summit is ongoing in Madrid right now, and it's 10 years since the COP15 summit in Copenhagen. Without question, climate change and the issues around it is, if not the defining issue of our time, certainly it's way, way, way up there. I have no doubt about that, and I'm very much on the side of the opinion that climate change is a pressing problem for the world and is directly related to human activity. I think that the majority of world scientists need to be listened to. Um, but where I disagree with is the eco zealots, the likes of Extinction Rebellion, and their sort of dystopian outlook, and the sort of demands that they're making is simply unrealistic. But my issue with the Green Lobby, or at least a certain aspect of the Green Lobby, is that they seem to think the answer to solving this problem is for us to go back to living in a sort of pre-industrial age of sorts. Um, anyway, there's a lot of things to say around it. So if I want to be a bit more specific here, I want to talk about Greta Thunberg. Now, I've been pretty critical of the Greta phenomenon from the start. And I've just seen a video which really, I think, would prove some of the criticism about her role in all of this. It's from Rebel News, and an important caveat here: I don't fully endorse Rebel News. I don't fully endorse all their ideas or all their political positions. Um, I don't agree with their sort of one size fits all regarding the globalists. I think some of their positions get into the realm of conspiracy theories, and I think that needs to be treated with a great deal of caution. But anyway, this is not about having an in-depth sort of analysis of the pros and cons of Rebel News. Came across a video, it was pretty brief, 4 minutes, and the guy from Rebel News said that he had a previous experience with Greta Thunberg where he asked her questions. I don't know whether this was at the UN summit in New York City or somewhere else. I missed that bit, but basically he asked her very directly but very politely. This was in some sort of foyer, or maybe in a hotel. I'm not 100% sure, but he said, "So is climate change a political issue or an environmental issue?" And at that point, her handler, a woman, who you couldn't see her face on the camera, she says, "Okay, at this point, we're going to ask you to leave us alone because this is kind of harassment and we have police contact if need be." Now, the thing here is the guy wasn't being aggressive, he wasn't being rude, it was just a simple question. And it seemed to me that, well, the handler claimed that he was harassing her. But here's my issue. If it's okay for Greta Thunberg to lecture world leaders at the most important stage in the world, the UN, right? If it's okay for her to rant and rave, literally, how dare you? That famous speech, where she can vilify the older generation as she has done, where she can promote the sort of dystopian narrative that Extinction Rebellion come out with. Um, if she could do all those things with a green light, surely it is valid for a journalist to ask her a question. And this is something that Greta Thunberg supporters can't escape from, which is they say, I've used the term personality cult because I do think there is that phenomenon going on around her. And they deny that. They say, oh no, you can answer questions. Really? Well, this guy couldn't. He was threatened with police action for asking her questions. In fact, come to think about it, I can't think of a situation where she has been put in a position where she has just freely taken questions. It's always been a case of Greta Thunberg making rants or making speeches and just her supporters blindly going along with it. There are a lot of questions about Greta Thunberg. For one thing, where how her entourage travels around her family. You know, it's all very well for her taking solar powered yachts across the Atlantic, something most people can never dream of. Most people are just thinking about paying the bills. That's a valid question. And now she's bringing other issues into it about patriarchy, colonialism, racism. What have these things got to do with climate change? I mean, that suggests there's an extra agenda. If she has concerns about those things, fine, but don't bring them under the umbrella of climate change. So I do think there's valid questions around this. And yes, over who funds her as well. It's a valid question. I'd like to say I don't entirely agree with Rebel News's sort of political outlook on everything. You know, the conspiracy theories, but there are valid questions, and I would simply put this to her supporters: if there isn't a personality cult, if she isn't being put in a bubble, then why is it whenever anyone asks questions of her, they're immediately denounced, especially if they're a man? Oh, you must be an insecure misogynist. You know, they're immediately shouted down as if they're somehow jealous of Greta Thunberg, as if by asking questions they feel threatened by her. Has it occurred to these people that maybe they're not threatened by her? They just take issue with Greta telling, you know, the older generation how to live and thinking that she knows more than everyone else. I think she is pretty smart, actually. I don't think she's I don't think she's stupid. I think she's pretty smart and assertive. But I do think she's being put in a bubble. And so she's going to grow up sort of thinking that she cannot be questioned. Because her handlers are doing this. They're putting her in a bubble. Her supporters are doing this. And I find it there's something deeply unhealthy about adults adulating a teenager in this way. Anyone. But you know, if you doubt me, consider this. Consider the t-shirts, mugs, posters, murals. This is a personality cult. And for what? Because it's a sort of populist personification of the climate movement. So when people say Saint Greta, they're not being vitriolic. They are making a sarcastic rebuke to this. Because personality cults are dangerous. Any personality cult. I've always been wary of them, whoever the person is. Um, and I think there's a great deal of intolerance among her supporters. Because if you question her, you're immediately denounced as a climate denier. What's interesting this thing Jeremy Clarkson had with Greta Thunberg of late. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of Clarkson. I do find him quite pompous, but he made a valid point. He called her a brat, and okay, you might say that's a bit rude, but you know, she is vilifying the people who brought her into the world. She is vilifying the people who give her a home, protection. You know, I think that is something that is worth critiquing because why should she get a green light to just vilify an entire generation? And a lot of people in that generation, frankly, look a bit absurd when they then praise her for it. Of course, any threats against her are wrong, any ad hominem attacks on her appearance. But ultimately, what we're talking about is a pretty privileged upper middle class Swedish girl who really has no real world experience. I think her message would be more poignant, for example, if she was from the Maldives or one of the low lying Pacific nations that are on the front line of climate change, or if she was a climate scientist who had dedicated her life to this. And that's another point. When she vilifies the older generation, she's vilifying climate scientists, you know, who might be in their 60s, 70s, 80s, who have dedicated their lives to this. And she's kind of become the poster girl of the whole movement. Everyone from Leonardo DiCaprio to Arnold Schwarzenegger to the Pope and many others have just blindly praised her. At some point, you have to say, well, look, if she's going to be the figurehead of this movement, then she can't be above criticism. And the criticism should be fair, it shouldn't be vitriolic, and it shouldn't be threatening. But her supporters need to just get out of this mindset that, oh, Greta is a 16-year-old girl with autism, therefore she can't be criticised. It's it's a really nauseating way of shutting down debate, actually, and I really have no respect for it because I think it's very manipulative. I've felt this way since the whole Greta phenomenon began. I will say this though, it isn't the critics that have kind of made her famous, it's her fans that have turned her into this cult figure. It's just the critics are now responding because they see something wrong with that. And I concede you may get some childish ad hominem attacks, and you may even get the occasional threat, which is obviously just wrong. You know, I would never condone that. But really, people need to, consider this as an issue that governments do need to address. There is many factors around it, but the Green Movement, and this does go beyond Greta Thunberg, they're sort of dystopian warnings. This idea that, oh, if unless we stop using planes, then we'll all die in 5 years. Those are the sort of that's the sort of hyperbole that they're coming out with, and billions of people will die. Um, even people who believe this is a grave problem, I'm sure even if you push him, David Attenborough would concede that is hyperbole. Um, so yeah, I don't like the Greta phenomenon one little bit because I think it is a way of silencing debate. I think it's manipulative, and I think Greta Thunberg is has more of an agenda than just environmentalism, and I think that's starting to become clear. I'll put a link to the video beneath this.